So the intention was to talk or process the darkness retreat I just came back from. I will have Scott, who runs that place, on the podcast in the future. But I got back not too long ago, so I thought it'd be good to maybe talk about it. And I thought about doing it by myself, but it's always better talking with you.
Yeah, I think sometimes I can get you to say more than you might say otherwise.
And it's a conversation, so it's not just me rambling. I will say this. When I was in there, I made a very strong point to not try or even have any ability to, quote, make content. I'm not going to take pictures of this. I'm not going to record myself like after it outside. No photos.
You mean sort of like you did with Grandmother's Sphere, how you recorded your ayahuasca insights and it became a song.
Yeah. I think that time in 2008, I didn't think it'd be a song.
Sure. That was just like a vocal journal.
Yeah. This was like nothing.
So you went into it thinking, I'm not going to in real time capture any of this.
Yeah. I wanted it to be anti-content in a way. So this
wonderful.
This is like...
Good for you.
I was like, I didn't even take a picture of like the room or anything.
No, you haven't shared anything like that.
I don't have anything.
Just stories.
I journaled, which I don't normally do. So I did a lot of just pages and pages of journaling. Honestly, that was before, like, and after and stuff. But anyway, I am reticent though to, like, I'm well aware that the story you tell can become the story. And there's not like, I was also very reticent when I got out. You know, I thought about this. It's funny, while I was in there, like, what do I tell people? Everyone's going to say the same thing.
What did you eat?
How was the dark? How was the dark?
They all want to know what you ate.
Yeah, that's sure. I'll talk about anything you like. But going in, you know, the questions were the same too. I noticed everyone I'd say,
What are you going to eat?
Do you want to answer that question?
That was the question they had going in. I heard people ask you that question so many times.
That was the least interesting part. I mean, I ate food. They serve you food once a day, and it's 2 meals, and it comes through this little box. So, you know, they can open one side, they put it in, then you open your side whenever you like, and it's all in Tupperware. And there was the same thing every day. It was a very delicious soup. Everything was vegetarian. So a hearty soup, a salad, and a chia pudding was dinner. I guess you could eat this in any order you wish. And the other day you could eat, they had some like 6 or 7 carrots and hummus with some homemade hummus and celery, 2 hard-boiled eggs. One day I got a PBJ, some nuts, and apple slices.
So high protein, vegetarian, simple-ish diet. Same food every day, which is smart.
And tea, sorry. And you also got herbal tea. Yeah, delicious tea in like a thermos. Mm-hmm. And I had weaned myself off of caffeine by about the first day or so. So that was a big deal for me. I wasn't having any caffeine. So really no overt drugs besides the drugs in food like sugars and apples and so forth.
How was your gut when you were there?
Tranquilo. I mean...
That's good.
Not really much of anything going on anyway. It's just sort of like... It was more just an emotional experience. Yeah. I mean, I guess there was some bean soups one day, so I mean...
How good did that feel to just rip that out in the dark by yourself as loud as you wanted? Probably so like cathartic and just enjoyable.
You know, some good laughs in there. I mean, for sure. I mean, you have a lot of feelings and a lot of emotions. So, but I was just gonna say when I was heading in, the question, if it came up, I wasn't advertising it, but if it came up in conversation with a friend, I'd say I'm going to this darkness retreat. They'd kind of wrap their head around what that meant, and then they'd say, "Are you leading it, or is this with a group of people?" And I would say, "No, you sit in a room in the dark." But I thought about that, and I'm like, wouldn't that be strange to be with a group of people in the dark? That feels more odd.
Well, it makes me think of a sweat lodge.
Sure, I guess so. Yeah, that's true. Well, anyway, they would kind of bug out. Their eyes would get wide, and they'd just think it was like I would never do that. That sounds, oh my God, that's so intense. And it was just really interesting to me because It was intense, but nonetheless, that was pretty much the uniform response. Except for one friend was like, "I would love to do that." It's just not counting you.
Yeah, because Radha's on the side of that's amazing. Good
Yeah.
for you.
Yeah,
I would
yeah.
love to do that.
So anyway, when I was coming out, I was just thinking like, well, I feel like I'm going to be on the other side of that kind of stereotype where they want to wrap it in their heads like what it was, good, bad.
Can I talk about can I mirror or share my experience of you going into it?
Yeah. By the way, there's no video to this podcast because it's in the dark.
No, it's because Radha is not camera ready.
You got smacked in the face too with a soccer ball.
Yeah, I have
Looks
a
like you got in a fight.
big scab right across the middle of my nose, and my right eye
You
is
look
all.
beautiful.
I definitely do not today, and that's okay. Yeah, so no video by my request because, anyways, we don't have to get into it. But I want to talk about my experience of you getting ready.
Okay.
You were quite nervous, like more nervous about this than almost anything I've experienced with you, maybe even more so than some of the performances.
Really?
And I think it seemed to be that because it was extended, like for probably like you went the end of January, and I want to say like end of December, you were already starting to say, I'm really nervous about this darkness retreat. Like as soon as you committed to going, you were like, I'm really nervous about it.
I guess I should point out that Scott invited me to go. And so this invitation came in my inbox, and so the place is booked out for a year and a half. They only have 3 spots. They're these underground Hobbit type rooms. And the people generally who go there have sought it out, really wanted to go and waited. And I was sort of like, I felt like the universe was asking me to go.
Yeah, you were invited maybe like October or November. You got that
a while back, and I kind
message.
of avoided. I was really stringing it along. Like,
maybe even September.
I'd ask a question, he'd reply, and I'd wait a while to ask one more.
Yeah,
I was like, I don't know.
But you committed to it sometime back in the fall, late fall.
Yeah.
But then come the end of December-ish, when it was coming up, you started to get, I guess, prepared. But you would just say how scared you were, how nervous you were, how unsure you were, how intense it was going to be. It was like it was, to me, something you were kind of dreading. Like, I'm doing this, but I'm really nervous about it being hard, and I don't want it to be hard, and I don't want to punish myself if it is hard. And when I tell people about it, they kind of freak out and don't know why I'm doing it. So the feedback you were getting from
like,
people,
are you nuts?
Yeah. And so then that played into your story of what am I doing? Why am I doing this? I'm so busy.
All right. Some of that I identify with.
Well, that was just my experience of you, like
Okay.
reticent and nervous, and
there was some dread. I definitely thought of it as inconvenient, and I had some worry. I wouldn't say I was scared. It's more just like, man, I really hope it's not XYZ. And I was trying to like just convince myself, whatever it is. I mean, what's the big deal? I mean, at the end of the day, you can always leave, and it's also like the main thing to do is rest. And I definitely was looking forward to like some perspective and unplugging from the hamster wheel of activity. But I was a bit sanguine about what it would be.
yeah, you weren't like skipping to get there. It wasn't that kind of
No.
energy. No. And so, things has just been hard for you too in general, of finishing the tour and through the end of the year. A lot has been coming up for you emotionally and just within your own self and your life and your process. And you're an intense, cerebral, very sensitive soul in this incarnation. And so things have just been a lot for you coming up to this too.
I sensed, it's funny, like I did have the end of the year was just pretty seismic, come down from the flying at whatever 1,000 feet, moving through the holidays, and I could just sense inside me a kind of change. And I saw this on the calendar, and I knew intuitively that's going to be like the kind of like leading up, all this is sort of leading up to this.
Yeah.
And I knew, and I really didn't want that, but I also was like, I know that's what's happening. and I really just want to get past it. You know?
Like have gone and been done?
Oh, yeah. I was like,
okay.
I can't wait to be on the other side of all of this shit I'm going through. And then all of that, I know that's going to be like the connection. And then I'm like, oh, man.
Yeah.
And I think I was getting in touch with some truth there because indeed, it and even the way it unfolded felt rather synchronistic in like the somatic work I did the day before. And we can talk about that. But.
Well, you were having some struggles and wanting to work with somebody, and I suggested somebody that I'd met through my somatic experiencing training that I knew was open to having new clients. And your first session with this woman was the day before you left for the retreat. And you only were able to have a session with her because the day before that, I'd helped convince you not to drive and that flying would be better for you.
Well, and it turned out there were some storms. Of course, here we're in the winter, and I thought this might happen. And it would have been like iffy getting there. Not to mention, there's 3 days of driving.
Yeah. So it's
which
like,
is kind of crazy.
Hun, don't do that. You deserve to just fly. Make it easy for yourself. Take an extra day. It's better.
Which was a nice move.
And then you had a somatic session with this new Navjeet, this new practitioner. She's fantastic. And I think that was deeper than you anticipated. And the day before you left,
I've never pronounced her last name though. I think it's Condola.
Condola? I don't know.
Yeah, but she has a somatic thing under Tender Logic. Is the name of her.
Maybe you'll link it in your show notes.
Yeah,
Navjeets.
And I want to talk about that whole somatic angle. That's important, and I also want to give reference to Adrienne, who I was working with there, is also somatic. So I mean, that whole piece of it was huge.
For you, I think maybe it ended up being synchronistic because you had this first session,
Friday.
And then you went and flew there the next day. Scott picked you up.
But that first session here in Boise, I knew this is something you had suggested, and you're a somatic practitioner, so like I'm familiar with it as a thing, and we've kind of danced into those realms. You've helped me out here and there. I think there's like a role play with your own partner that it's a little, I don't know, it's just different than when I do it with someone I don't know.
Yeah,
They're
it's
just
better
playing
for
a role,
you.
right? They're just like, I'm here to be the practitioner.
Totally. I wanted you to see her.
So when I did, I had the session in the morning at like 9 a.m, and I remember thinking, I don't know, I'm going to do this. I'm all in, but at the same time, I don't know if this is right for me or useful. And we drop in kind of meditation, kind of visualization. And I immediately saw some visualization and thought to myself, that's the silliest thing. It's whatever this is, it's obviously stupid and not really, but you know what? Fuck it. I'm seeing blank. I don't think it's too personal. I was just seeing what looked like kind of the shape of like a little unicorn, like a fluffy, I was like, this is so dumb for me to be like, I guess I'm seeing a unicorn. And I go into that. And so I go into it, and then I'm like, I think it's a piñata. And then I went into more. I was like, actually, I think it's like a Trojan horse, but piñata church. I was like, now I was getting like chills and like emotions starting to come up. I'm starting to feel it right now.
Yeah.
And let me just say, off to the fucking races from there. Because then it was like this whole thing about like being a child and a Trojan horse and the candy, even what that represents, beating something to get there. And it was, so I just was broken open. And all this emotion was coming out. And I'm just thinking like, well, that emotion's real, and whatever's happening right now, it's something. I'm not at all, I couldn't choose to just force this out. I don't know what this is. So I was broken open in a good way, but felt very tender and like primed 24 hours before I was leaving for this darkness retreat. And so when I did get there, I felt already like something's going already.
And the first day is
Scott,
sort of like a practice day.
Yeah, Scott picked me up and he said, are you ready to go in the dark? And I said, I don't know, man. I think most people are like, yeah. It's like, I don't know. You're supposed to kind of weave in and out, and the first day is not really your first day. So I went into the dark. It's out half hour outside Ashland in some off-grid land, completely off-grid.
Sky Cave Retreats.
Yep.
That's what it's called, right?
Yep. And I went in, I don't know, before dinner, and I was thinking, like, this is a practice night, right? And tomorrow I'll come out as my plan. I, like, started, at first it was just kind of, like, trying to keep my cool, like, okay, no big deal. You lay out things in the room and just memorize where everything is.
Are there lights? Is there a light switch?
There is, but it's covered.
Okay.
And if you were to switch it on, it's very dim. It's solar, so there's actually no outlets in the wall. There's no power other than that one solar-powered light.
Okay.
Which I think they pride themselves that there's not any like electricity running through.
Yeah, it's supposed to be like all EMF free.
It's extremely analog in that way, but totally like under the ground, insulated, big wood stove they feed from the other side. You have a bathtub, which is hugely amazing. That was the best thing about it. And then there's a little bathroom, and then there's a yoga mat. What else things called?
The back
foam roller was in there.
So first night's practice night, a little novel. You're exploring your hobbit hole.
Yeah, and seeing if my little systems work. Like I brought, for instance, a journal in case I wanted to write random words, and like, where will the pen stay? And, will I just where are things and how will I find them? They're against walls, that kind of thing. I won't step on things.
Can I jump ahead and ask a question?
Yeah.
Did you lose anything? Did you misplace anything in the dark and you're crawling around looking for it?
No, but there was things like this. Like I laid out in the bathroom my toothbrush and my toothpaste against the wall, like behind a sink. So I can always find that. And I noticed there was like my toiletries bag was off to the side. I was like, all I really need is to floss. But then there were things in there that I realized without the dark, mistake as toothpaste that are like creams that you would never want to put in your mouth. So I instantly started thinking like, all right, I got to like make sure I don't accidentally put the wrong toothpaste on. You're just brushing away and it's like
your preparation age.
Some butt cream or something, It wasn't butt cream, but I didn't really misplace things. But I'll say this, like I was eating dinner and I spilled soup all over myself.
This is the first night.
Yeah. So I already screwed up. Like I learned some rules quickly about being careful where you place things and putting things against the wall if you're not using it. And like grab the tea from against the wall, unscrew the cap. Like don't leave the cap off because it's so easy to knock something over. Just moving around. You can't see anything. Like, and it is a bit shocking that you're like, I don't know if the last time I had this little light or no light was being in an ape cave in Washington State in the Boy Scouts.
How did you know when you were done wiping?
God. Intuition. Acts of God. Right.
Okay. So everybody wants to know. That's the question.
Do they?
I
don't think they do. I really don't.
Somebody's thinking it.
You do. So there were some bumps, but let's just say that the first night wasn't a big deal in that way. It's just more like novel, and you're just trying to keep your cool and not think about, man, this is a lot more time in here. I took a bath, like a bath. I brought Epsom salts, which was super pro move. So anyway, I went to bed and had a relatively normal sleep, I suppose. But when I woke up, it was extremely disorienting. Very disorienting.
Did you know where you were? Did you have to remind yourself, I went to the darkness?
Well, I didn't sleep. I was kind of waking, sleeping, so I felt like I never really disappeared into sleep, but it still was enjoyable. The point is, I didn't know what time it was when I woke up, and I thought, I don't know if it's 4 a.m. or if it's 5 p.m., And Scott was supposed to come back in the morning to check in at like 9 or 10 or something. And I thought, well, that would be my way of kind of knowing. And time kept passing. I started getting really anxious. Like, maybe he did come. Maybe he's not going to come. Are these people reliable? Where the hell am I? How did I get here? Can I trust them? This is my consciousness. I'm feeling very vulnerable. I started to feel more and more vulnerable. And then I started really ruminating. And I mean that in a very exacting way, like thinking deeply about things. And things just started to really start to open up. And
what were you thinking about?
Everything. All sorts of things. But I was starting to feel a lot of like old stuff coming up.
Old stuff meaning what?
Shame feeling, guilt feeling, regrets, like uncomfortable feelings from the past, and a lot of emotion too. And I'm just like, kind of like, why am I feeling why am I crying? Why am I feeling so much emotion? And just sort of like the somatic session, just like, what's happening? And not feeling like I had any support, anything to grab onto, and also those feelings of like, have I been forgotten?
Oh,
Like, did they
I can
just
see that.
literally forget to come? And they're like, oh, whatever. And I'm like, I don't have this. I felt very vulnerable.
Abandonment, anxiety, out of control.
And this is the practice day. Okay. Like, I haven't officially, technically started the retreat. And I'm like blown open emotionally. Okay. And I'm feeling some things that I'm just like, whoa, hit the brakes. I was going to do that in 3 or 4 days and maybe work on,
How did you manage yourself?
not well. Not
Okay.
well. So I also tried everything I thought I would do. Like, I started singing songs. I had a little shruti box. And these things were helpful. Like, I'd sing songs I'd make up songs about what I was feeling. I did yoga. I took a bath.
All in the morning when you woke up.
I think so. Yeah. I probably did some exercise. I tried all the things, like what will help, But I was just really also struggling with the enormity of what was in front of me. Like, man, just this for like a week. Finally, Scott comes, and I ask him, what time is it? Thinking like, it's 2 p.m. I'm about to chew him out. He's like, it's 9:30. I said, I'd be here around 9. And I'm like, oh my God. Like, I've been through hell and back. And I'm kind of whimpering a bit. And he asked me, how are you? And I was like, I'm struggling. I'm struggling, man. And I also had these feelings like I was different or something, like other people don't go through this, or I'm weak, or like that's part of the shame too. It's like, I'm East Forest. I'm supposed to come in here and, I'm supposed to be like, I'm supposed to just conquer this and be like, all these things. And I feel like a puddle of just humanity in here. And I told him that I had a real big fear of walking out of there whenever this process ended and being more broken than when I walked in. And I said, my partner and I, she's really important to me. And we've been going through some stuff in the past month or two with a lot of changes in our lives. And it hasn't been the easiest. And I said, I'm not going to bring that back to her. And I said, I don't care how much money I've spent to get here. I said, if I need to pull the plug and get out of here, I'm out of here today. If I'm going to be worse off, I got to stop the bleeding. And he's a very sweet, beautiful man. And he's like, I love he'd just sit there and listen, and there'd be long pauses. And he'd just be like, yeah. He's like, well, I think you're supposed to have a session with Adrienne today. And Adrienne was the other somatic therapist who works there in craniosacral. He said, I have a feeling after you work with her, you'll feel at least different. You'll feel more. You'll have more information. So that's not too long from now. Why don't you come out, take a walk, and do that session? And I feel like I'm talking too much here.
No, you're not talking too much.
So we kind of made a triage short-term plan like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did see Adrienne later, and she's amazing. Amazing. I'm going to get her last name. She doesn't have a website as far as I know.
And so when folks go to the Sky Cave retreats, they can... It's kind of, I remember when you were getting ready to go, you're like, they recommend that we do
It's
this
optional.
somatic session. It's
Yeah.
kind of like a la carte. You can pay a little extra for it. I'm going to go ahead and do it.
It wouldn't have been the same I couldn't have stayed without working with her.
Yeah, you were very
I wouldn't
grateful.
have stayed, I should say. Because I would have had no, it'd just be me,
Yeah.
just flailing around,
So then you got to see her.
Yeah. And she comes in, she sets up like a table, lights a candle, and she's very sweet. And she says, okay, so why are you here? Tell me why you're here. And I told her, I was like, I don't know. It's like, I was invited, and I've been struggling with that question all night. And like, I just burst open into tears. And she immediately started doing kind of what I did with Navji, a session, just sitting across from me, just sort of helping me track through, okay, why don't you just feel that feeling? Like, where are you feeling it? Let's go there. Put your attention gently there. And we just go there for a while. I feel in my stomach all this tension. Okay. What are you, I don't want to bastardize her stuff, but you would know.
Yeah, but
tracking it
Do
through.
you want to share those details of what came up for you?
Well, first off, there's a lot, so I don't want to get in the weeds, but it's more about what came out of that is it was a long session too. And she has this amazing ability when she does touch you. She would just touch like my feet if I was lying on the table, or my head. That's it, and just holding my feet. And just through that, she could sense what was going on in my body. Just like, okay, what happened? Where are you? You know, what just happened? What are you feeling in this moment?
So she could sense pivotal or key moments in your own inner
through my
process.
body. Yeah. And it was the same thing with Navjeet. Because I went with Navjeet, I was in that flow, and I did the same thing. I was trying to just trust what was coming up, even if it felt silly. And inevitably, same thing, it would just take me down these really profound avenues. And I'll just fast forward a bit. You know, going through several days of this, I've learned these messages are coming from my body, and imagine all of our bodies, through our minds and through our bodies all the time.
Yes.
And of course, it's extremely easy for it to conjure an image because it's you and your body. And your body's been evolving for billions of years, really, I mean, at least millions. But from the beginning of time, this technology of our body, so yes, it's very easy for it to pop up an image or...
Yeah. The way I've always described it is your body is the filing cabinet of all of your life experiences. It's not like an invisible system somewhere out there in the sky and outer space. Your body is the memory reservoir. So yes, the images do come when you pay attention to the sensations. They're intimately linked. It's really cool. And David Nichtern, the meditation teacher, he said this once on my podcast, and I'll tell my clients this.
Ethan or David?
David.
Okay, cool.
Who works with Duncan. Ethan's David's son.
Right.
Anyways, David said, first thought, best thought. I think Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche said that. First thought, best thought. So where you say, like, I was second guessing the unicorn or what was coming up, it's like you just have to go with it. Yeah. First thought, best thought.
Yeah. And I think I've heard these things a lot, and I've even played with this, but this was just giving me so much time to practice it with these women who were very skilled, such as yourself. And I was realizing... that I wanted to learn the language of my body, but I also wanted to become more fluent in trusting that. And by doing this process, I was coming up through a lot of revelations, and then I would kind of go back into the dark.
Well, you all came up with a plan after your experience with Adrienne, with that you
and Scott,
instead of staying in the dark, for 3 days solid, let's say, it was go in and every day you'll come out and you'll have another session with Adrienne.
Come out in the afternoon and we do a session of sorts. Yep. And see how it goes, or change it as you go, whatever you want to do. And they were recognizing, like, this is important for everyone who comes here, that it's what's right for you. It's not like it has to be a certain way.
No, and you weren't going for like a week-long Zen silent retreat in a meditation cell. It's not like that. You weren't coming to practice without distractions or things like that. You were coming really intuitively to do this deep work because, as you said before, everything in your life had been leading you to it, but not exactly sure how that would look.
And you are off your phone. A, there's no service, and B, I just chose to be. And I'm not, of course, doing any meetings or emails or externalizing my communications with that many people. I mean, that alone was huge. So, I mean, that all happened. So in that sense, there was that level of like retreat, not having caffeine to, of course, alcohol or anything else. So that happened. But, they said to me, I think I felt shame just about, I felt embarrassed. And I also felt like I was a problem. It's like, look at me, and now they're having a meeting outside about me. This is probably 5 minutes of them just checking in. But I was like...
What were you embarrassed about?
Like, I'm a mess, and now they have to figure out what to do to help me.
That's what they're there for.
Yeah, well, looking back, it's strange how different my perspective was there. I was such a, little nascent baby. Mm-hmm. Everything was so raw. I was so,
I guess what that touches on, too, is, you were really in in their hands and in their care.
I was trusting them. I was at first having a hard time. But
Yeah.
once I eventually did. But they said, look, they said, no, they said most people break down. They didn't want to say that's the point, but like, this is good. This is great. You're in the work. You're in the dark.
Well, it's kind of like a psychedelic experience,
Yeah.
right? Like most people break down in a psychedelic journey at some point. It's part of the process.
It's a journey. It's a journey.
It's a journey.
They said things like, look, nothing to feel bad about. There are people who come in here who have their big fancy practice. They didn't use those words, and they go in for a week, 10 days. They come out, they're the same person. And it's almost like they, quote, held up the dark with their practice, the strength of their actually strong practice. But
When you say practice, you mean meditation?
could be that, yeah. Could this be a personality? It's like you're so disciplined in your life. You have whatever your thing is. And you're like,
It's like me against the dark.
You don't crack. You don't allow it to just be like, you know what? What if all that went away?
Could you crack and then hide it, I wonder? Like pretend like you didn't crack?
You could, because no one would know.
That's silly.
But it's up to you. Point is, they were just saying, most people, the way they do it, that you weave in and out, you have the day off, then you go back in and you have this stint. People do it all different shapes and sizes, but that maybe by like a third day in the dark fully was maybe more typical for like sort of I don't know what the right word is, breaking open or...
You were on the accelerator path.
Well, I think working with Navjeet before and where I was at coming in, and also, yes. So my practice day felt like day one full on. I felt like I'm in it. I'm so in it. And I also, through the process, realized what was actually very important for me was to take charge from my point of view and to say yes or no. And it's like, no, I decide. It's not like this is the system and I have to succumb to it and I'm going to beat it. It's more like it'd be very powerful for me to say yes or no to everything here. And eventually, I decided to leave 2 days early, 5 days in versus 7.
Before you get there, more questions tell us more about your time in the darkness. So let's say day 2, if you could recall. Or maybe even day 3.
Adrienne told me briefly some stuff about, I can't remember the details, some brain science stuff about like actually how when you don't get the melatonin this or the daylight in the morning, something about a certain part of your brain activates and you really do ruminate in a different way. I think that's why the mornings can be harder for people. And I've definitely felt that. The nights honestly felt kind of like novel, almost fun. And the mornings would be like, what is going on? Like emotionally. And even knowing that was helpful. I'd be like, okay, that might happen. That's fine. So I would take a lot of baths and stay. I mean, everything would be do it as long as you can, eating anything because you have time. You get time rich. So I was in the baths. Are you uncomfortable?
Me?
Can I talk about this? Yeah.
No, why?
Okay. I don't know. I'm just
because I'm breathing.
I'm uncomfortable.
Yeah. Oh, okay, I'm 100% fine.
I mean, this whole conversation makes me kind of uncomfortable.
What's feeling uncomfortable?
Just my body. I'm remembering. It's just very alive. It was so emotional that I'm feeling emotion in my body now, remembering it.
Where are you
I just want to put out there that like, if anyone else tries this on their own, it's going to be your experience. This was just my experience. This isn't like the way, I don't think I've figured out the darkness or anything like that. This is just what happened to me. It's just a story. So I was in the bath and basically whatever came up in the somatic session or technique, I would kind of work with that.
Like a memory or a
Well, so I
insights?
think day 2 or 3, I was in the bath and I was thinking about all this guilt and shame and grief. And, you can find surface level reasons, right? And some of those I knew walking in, but now they're just like, it's like you've picked a scab and it's bleeding. But I really was able then to have all this time through the somatic work. I'd sit there and put my hands on my legs and just try to feel the sensation in between them and then like maybe ask it a question, just like let it take me somewhere.
Your body?
Yeah. Into the grief. Okay, where am I feeling the grief in my body? Feel it in wherever, my arms, and then I just kind of let it tell me stories. And I just, for a long time, And I started going through the layers of it and having some major revelations about, well, when was I was realizing I just wanted to feel accepted. Okay. Then I asked myself, well, when did I last feel accepted? I started going back in time. Back in time. Back in time. And I went like, well, I think if I'm honest with myself, the last time I felt truly like no judgment was I was 4 or 5. And before that. Because basically once I got into school, things started to change. So I went back and first I just feel that wonderful aliveness I think we all hopefully think about with pure childhood. And yeah, and then it was just tracking. But basically, it just feels boring.
No. Hold on. So knowing, you realized for yourself this sort of lack of feeling acceptance, true acceptance, like really trusting that you're accepted.
Like you don't even think about it. And then so basically it's like, well, when did I start not feeling that? And I realized it was in school, and I actually remembered certain things that happened. And it was a progressive thing from kindergarten, first, second, all things I remember. And then 3rd grade, I had this breakdown that came up one of my somatic sessions. And I was like, fuck, I remember that clear as day, where I had a real panic attack. And I've told you about this, but
Yes.
I just had this random, so to speak, panic attack. And at the time, I didn't really know why.
Yeah, but you were like 7 or 8.
I was sitting on my Mrs. Young's lap. I remember she's wearing a red blouse and a leather skirt. That's how Mrs. Young rolled. And she was patting me on the back, and I was just crying and blethering. She didn't understand what was happening because nothing had happened to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember telling her, I just realized that like I have to go to 4th grade, and then I have to go to 5th grade, and then I have to go to high school, and then I have to go to college, and I have to get a job. I'm like, this is not, I'm special. That's not special. I'm a soul. I'm like, I'm not, I just felt like I saw that there was no beating the system. Like
You had that
there was
realization.
no way out. There was no fucking way out.
You saw the system as a child and it crushed you.
I saw it in kindergarten, but I kept trying maneuvering, and school is still, in 1st grade, I walked out of 1st grade day 1. 2nd grade sucked. 3rd grade, I finally was like, I broke. They broke me. The world broke me, and I gave up. I didn't give up, but I was like, I have to buy into this system and play by the rules and try to win this game. Otherwise, I'll be homeless or something.
That's a pretty high level thought for a child.
Yeah, and it sucked. It sucked. So after that, I started then seeing what happened to me, and this was a huge aha for me. I mean, these are all things I knew, but it was like it was connecting the dots.
Yes.
That was the same year I became Sir Trevor the Great. That was just an attempt. It was just an attempt at being maybe I'll just say I'm Sir Trevor the Great. I'll be different.
Yeah, you announced this is what everyone needs to call me. This is what I go by. This is what I answer to.
I signed my papers that way.
I am Sir Trevor the Great.
Yeah, I go by Sir Trevor for short. That was acceptable.
And that came after the breakdown because you were like,
I honestly don't know if it was before that, but same time period.
Yeah.
You know? And then, or maybe I remember that year I got the class clown award. It was just me trying to get attention, to feel approved, accepted. You see? Me wanting to
feel special.
But me wanting to feel accepted, is this the word I'm using? Accepted now. I was like, when was the last time I accepted myself? And I was like, when I was 4 or 5. And when did I feel accepted? 4 or 5. After that, I had to like do things to be accepted. I had to get grades. I was in this system that quantified. And so I was like, well, and then 5th grade, I discovered our class, we did a play, and I got the lead role, and I was just naturally good at acting. It was just easy for me. And I got attention. So guess what I did? I became an actor all the way until age like 30.
Yeah.
I got a master's in it. I was really good at it, and I got a lot of feedback. I got accepted, and I discovered around that same time I was pretty good at like singing, and I was in choir. So I dove headfirst in those 2 things for a long time. Had a lot of fun. I'm just saying, I see where it came from.
Yes. And I'm remembering the day before you left after your session with Navjeet, you said, and I might have asked you what your intention was, or somehow you had come to it in your session and you said, I'm going there to learn to love myself.
Self-love.
Self-love is what you
Yep.
said. And I was like, wow.
And we joked that it was like radical self-love because that's a silly phrase. It's like, it doesn't. It's almost worse if it's radical. It's like it's just self-love.
But I remember saying to you, wow, I'm really proud of you. Usually it takes a long time for people to realize like that's what they're actually trying to get. That's what they actually need to heal. At the core of it for most of us is a sense of self-love, like really, truly loving ourselves. When we do our healing work, we're trying to figure that piece just by itself out. And I said to you, I hope that you find that. I hope you learn to love yourself like as much as I love you.
That's what you text me when I was going in. And that phrase really stuck with me because I'm like, why can't I love myself as much as you love me? And that really, I had a lot of time to think about that. And that's where I was going in these trackings in the tub and realizing, when did I love? The word accepted really worked for me. When did I accept myself? And anyway, it was difficult. And even having that, I actually said, holy shit in the tub when I went back and found the root. I was like, oh my God. And I just saw it all, but I didn't know what to do with it. Okay, I just was a revelation. And it goes all the way, fast forwarding beyond getting attention through acting, it was also wanting in college like attention from women. I mean, part of this is biological, but still, you want to feel accepted. You want to feel, it's another way.
Part of it is this piece is like let's take the women, for example. If they think I'm desirable and they want me, then there must be something about me that's good. That's how you're getting the validation. I'm approved, but I'm only getting it externally. They're validating me, so then yes, I guess I'm okay. It's not you just feeling fine by yourself, which most of us have that.
Yeah, well, these are all the ways it manifested, including my impatience. I even saw how like my impatience today, I would say that's a primary obstacle of mine.
Tell me how that relates to acceptance.
Because I started to see that achieving anything from like I need to go to the grocery store to like I'm releasing a new album, like different forms of achievement are ways of getting approval, accepting myself through things being achieved.
So every time you achieve something, you get approval and you're impatient for that acceptance?
Yeah, impatience just means you want more of it faster.
More faster.
Get it? The drug. It's like the reason you also want it being bigger, also having it be bigger, is just because you want more of it. Mm-hmm. You see here?
It's an endless void.
All the way back to age 4. And I'm just like, oh, hence the holy shit in the tub. Because I was just like, everything relates back to this. Everything. And so me wanting to feel accepted as like this desire in me, I realized, of course, the obvious thing is, how do I accept myself? And I think it partially came by me recognizing also that everybody has the same chart in their own way, meaning we all are born, let's say, pure. And things happen to us. And I realized the things, quote unquote, that happened to me, or the society, the world that I had to feel I had to break, that broke me, that wasn't my fault. It wasn't my fault. That happened to me. I reacted. I made choices. I'm responsible for choices I made. But I mean, it was not in a vacuum. And I saw that with everybody else too. I mean, everybody's things they're doing is because of things that happened to them. I know this sounds obvious, but when you internalize it so deeply for yourself, I now can externalize this compassion for others.
And trying to fit into this system.
Well, the system, I've said, what's the old Krishnamurti quote?
I don't know.
That if you're well adjusted to a sick world, broken world, that's not a good thing. And I can say that and intellectualize that.
Well, you've experienced the truth of that for yourself, but everyone is trying to fit into the sick system. And it's,
yes.
I mean, and we have the sickest society.
Yes, absolutely.
So that's I'm just reiterating the compassion now that you have for others.
And that's how I figured out how I could maybe have it for myself. It's kind of seeing how this process, I can see other people's issues. I'm like, oh, but that has a source code too. And that happened to them. And I have compassion that shit happened to them. Or how they've overcome things. I think even, your story. We all have these stories. So then I was really working on the self-love was manifesting as, what does it feel like to accept what happened to me? That's different than I forgive myself for the choices I made, which is what I've been playing with for years.
Dude, just the acceptance of it, again, is so key. Because people want to try to change it or push back against it
and regret for
or
me.
do something about the fact that they have that feeling. And I'm always like, no, let's just be with the fact that you have this feeling. Can we just hold it?
Well, holding it's
so
one thing,
hard.
but for me it was also, and you know what? I'm okay with that I have shame.
There, bingo.
Like, and you know what? I accept that I have guilt and shame, and those things were hard, and that's okay. That's part of me. It sounds so Stuart Smalley, but like,
You're
it
killing
was a big deal.
It is a big deal.
It was a big deal, and so that way, and then I had the grace of being able to, the next afternoon or whatever, talk to Adrienne and say, I'd had this revelation. I remember we did our session, and I broke down again, and I was on the table, and I won't go into all the stuff I was feeling and stuff, but I remember she was holding my head, and there was this long silence, and it's hard to describe, but she just said, I feel like you just had a baptism into the light. And I was like, what do you mean? And I think she meant like you're holding the light in a way that you've not allowed yourself to do since you were a baby. Like, and I asked her, like, what do I do to engender this? And she's like, it's feeling, when you feel it, it's to then just lean into it tenderly and allow it to just feel a little more.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Yeah.
And I realized, she asked me when I feel that kind of energy. And I thought, well, I feel it when I'm with you, Radha, and I'm like essentially like cuddling. And it's just like, there's just a moment of that. And I said, I also feel it sometimes when I'm in nature. I'm just like walking around. And I also feel it sometimes with music. And all of a sudden, another aha hit me. So those are all times when I'm feeling something and not thinking about something.
Yeah.
And I realized, oh, so the doorway here is feeling it in my body. That's it. And just leaning into that gently and tenderly a little bit.
Yes.
That's the medicine. That's the workout, so to speak.
Yes.
To like, as opposed to up here in my head.
Yes.
Which is what? It's just one part of, I want to give it credit, but it's part of my body, but it's one part.
Oh, that's so wonderful. It's
so when she
good.
said like baptism into the light, and at first, and it was fucked up. The first thing came to my head is like, oh, she doesn't know what she's talking about, or something like that. Like, no.
If she really knew me.
Yeah,
like that kind of thought.
Oh, well, you're mistaken. Like
because of me, like saying like you referential.
Yeah. Just like I'm saying, I immediately went to the negative, and I'm like, I think that was what she's almost saying. Like, hold that.
Yes, that's what I'm teaching people too in sessions. Is when we touch on those places, it's the same cue, which is expands your ability to hold that, stay with it longer. Be with that
How
longer.
do you suggest people hold it longer or hold it at
Well,
all?
it's a simple practice is even like remember the last time you really enjoyed something or your favorite place. Think about your favorite place in nature and then see it and imagine it in all 5 senses and then just hold it for a minute. See if you can be with that memory for 1 minute. And notice how it feels in your body. Because so quickly, the yeah and the buts and the no's and the complaints and the judgments will creep in. And you're like, you just kind of gently let those slough off. Can you just think of something positive for 1 minute? That's the beginning. Or when you do feel that yumminess, which is terrible phrase, but expand it.
So I just would like to ask more about that. When you say
Yeah.
think about it, I don't. Is it though thinking, or
Well, the
what does it mean to
thinking,
feel that into that?
the memory, thinking is like for you, remember a favorite time in nature. That's thinking. But as soon as you start to remember it, your body will shift.
So do you put your attention onto the feeling in your body, like it might be in a place?
Okay. Not in a broad, general directive sense. It's like, think about being in Boulder, right? Being in the desert. Think about going on a hike in the desert and imagine the smells of the pinyon and the desert, the canyon. See the colors, see the sunshine, the texture of the sand and the walls. Like, five sense it. What's the taste? What do you hear? So as you begin to remember it with the sense memory, do you notice anything happening in your body? What's happening in your body?
I feel more expansive, more relaxed.
Yeah, so now just feel that sense of expansion while remembering being in the desert. And feel, how do you know that you feel relaxed?
Like a deepening of my breath and
Yeah.
muscles, feeling less tense.
Mm-hmm.
I
So
notice my brow fur, you know what I mean,
softens.
less.
Yeah, your furrow softens. So then you, like, people will say, I feel relaxed or I feel stressed. And then I'll say, like, well, how do you know you feel stressed? And then they begin to describe their body. Or how do you know you feel relaxed? My face relaxed. My breathing's deeper. My muscles are soft. Well, pay attention to that. My muscles are soft. I'm breathing slower.
And your training, it's focuses around using these methods to work through traumas.
Well, working through traumas is part of it. And then the other side of it is what we just did, which is then expanding somebody's capacity to feel good. And the more that you do that, the easier it is to feel good and the longer you can feel good for.
Gives another meaning to muscle memory, right?
Yeah,
It's like literal muscle memory.
it's literal muscle memory. So
Yeah.
you're helping people reset their nervous system to feeling good and then feeling good for longer and feeling good easier.
It's good work you do. Put a little ketamine on that recipe and it's like, boom.
You don't even need that though.
I know. That's what I was realizing. That was blowing my mind, was that I was really just in there with nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Literally nothing. No drugs of any kind. And just my body and my feelings and the darkness. The darkness, in a way, it sounds like a cliche. It shines a light on all these parts of yourself that are usually covered up by the light, by all the stuff, by all the doing, by all the activity, the mental activity. I'm sure your brain waves are changing when you're in the dark into more like theta and delta.
They do change. They do. As somebody wants to try something experimentally with the dark too, Benji and I did this the other day because he was kind of excited about you having gotten back.
Was he really, though? Was he acting excited?
Stop it. Yes. And so we were having, you weren't around, but he and I were eating together. And he's like, here, have a bite of this, but you have to have your eyes closed. So he and I were eating together with our eyes closed.
Should do the mind folds on.
But I just noticed I was eating slower. I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
when my eyes aren't open, I'm chewing so much slower than I
Yeah.
do with my eyes open.
Yeah.
So that's a simple thing.
Well, I know we gotta get going with our day here. Do you have any other questions? Or do we
Well,
complete the story?
you decided to come home early.
Right. So by my 5th day, technically that would have been most people's 3rd day because of the practice day. Blah. I felt like, look, I've already done what feels like 5 intense days for me. I felt relatively complete in that process. And I also missed you a lot. And I just thought, I think it'd be really powerful for me to say, I'm actually good. I'm going to go. And I did that. And it felt, at first, I was really nervous about that. I have a lot of regrets sometimes about cutting things short. But once I actually made the choice, I felt really good about it.
Like, I'm going to go
Empowered.
home.
I felt empowered. I was like, I've made a plan. And I felt like I'd been doing good work. And I thought, like, no, this feels good. This feels right now, this process.
How did it feel to turn your phone on again?
Not good. Not good. I was like, how fast can I get the do not disturb on? I didn't want all the things to pop up, which worked.
Okay.
And then I could slowly pick and choose what I was dropping into. And not having the phone was actually amazing because certainly there's some of that's inconvenient and not fun, yada, yada, yada. But it reminded me of how life used to be, before the phone. And for our generation, we have a lot of memories of that.
Mm-hmm.
But it feels like a distant memory now. And we kind of wonder like, well, sure, but we didn't know, right? It just didn't exist. And it showed me that after a few days, you can easily fall back in that same kind of beingness. I wasn't like radically different. I'm just saying like that's just not in it. It's just not part of the picture.
The phone.
Yeah, and you just occupy yourself with other things in a different way. And it reminded me on a cellular level what that felt like. And it was a wonderful memory to feel again. Not that I was so perfect or great, in college when I didn't have a phone. It was just more like, oh, right, I remember this. Oh, right. And it wasn't an idea. I felt it. So that was cool. That was just cool to get in touch with that. I wouldn't have done it otherwise.
It's so hard.
It is literally like, it was inconvenient to go to do this. I mean, I had to put a lot of things on the shelf and put different things in place so I could be away for 6-ish days, like truly away. And usually when we're away, at some point you're able to like check in on certain things need your help. You'll deal with that, but you're kind of away. You're just like
light.
Yeah, you're in the fridge. You're not on ice.
Yeah, I can reflect and share that my experience of you on the other side is that you're so much more grounded, like light years more grounded.
Light years.
Not that you were like, I don't know how to say this. You
Makes
just
me sound pretty bad.
No,
walking in.
I don't want to say that it's that bad. It's just I know going in, things had been so rough, and so you coming back, yeah, there's like a solidity, a surety. Maybe it's peace too. It's like grounded. This feels really peaceful. You feel really loving, actually, like so sweet and loving. You feel more patient with everything. You feel, all the positive things. You feel more open.
I do feel more clear. I do feel my priorities got reoriented. I do still feel actually pretty raw and tender, but like, you know what? What has it been? 2 weeks? Week and a half?
It's been a week and a half.
Yeah. So like, I guess it hasn't been that long, but if that tenderness and rawness stays, I think I just need to reorient. It's like, actually, that's not bad.
No.
I just feel very open.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what if I continue to? When I talk about certain aspects of this, I start to cry.
I feel like maybe you've cried every day since then, at least with me in these little moments when you're just...
In small ways,
You're just so... Even it's often
But they're not
things,
bad tears.
No, they're just like,
No.
Rod, I love you so much. And you're just crying. You've almost done that every day since then. It's the sweetest. And I'm like, oh, babe, I love you too. And I just hold you while you weep a little bit.
I had and have a lot of gratitude for you. When I was in there, it was overwhelming. Truly overwhelming. It's hard to describe, but just given how much I've gone through in my life and the kind of shame and guilt I was feeling, this feeling how accepted I was from you, that text you sent, like, I hope you can accept yourself as much as or love you as much as I love, blah, blah, blah. I hope you can love yourself as much as I love you. And that was just like reverberating for me. And I was just picking it apart from different angles, like, it was just a text, but it was like, no, this is like a koan for me to like why am I even struggling with that concept? Like, or what's stopping me? Or what, I don't know, just, there's a lot there. Look, I want to just point out the obvious. There's a lot of privilege and indulgence being able to do this at all. It also was it was sort of high tech in a way, but low tech. You could do this with certain kind of blindfolds if you really wanted to, that if you got it the right kind, double them up or something. And you had someone help.
Didn't you say you talked to somebody who did that at home when like their mom made them food?
I've heard of that. Aubrey Marcus, of course, if you haven't heard his episode from this podcast, definitely go back and listen to Aubrey's story when he went to the dark in Germany.
That's from 2020, early 2020.
It was fascinating. That's when the whole thing got on my radar.
Yes.
Aubrey's story. I'd love to connect with him about it. I'm confident, and Scott said this, like, everybody's experience is the same or different every time. Even for him. He went in and he told me once, his stuff's crazy, like 70 days or something.
Aubrey wasn't there for 70 days.
No, Scott.
Oh, okay. The other thing, just before we get off, is people often want to know about visuals.
Oh, yeah. So I was all hung up on, like, that too a bit. And I remember that first day with Adrienne, I was crying, and I said, but if I come in and out, like, that'll ruin the whole process. And everyone says, I'm supposed to have this DMT and the visual. And she immediately did this gesture with her hand, like throwing a bunch of shit off the table. She said, forget about the visuals. It doesn't usually happen. Who cares? Forget about the visuals. She totally was like irrelevant. And you know what? It is irrelevant. It's like, what's relevant, she's like, do you see what's happening right now? Like, this is real. You are processing and blossoming and shedding, and like, this is beautiful. Fucking visuals from like some DMT. It's like, okay, so yeah, maybe you see some like lights. And I talked to, when I left, I ran into someone who was in the adjacent hut, and she just come out from 7 days. And she mentioned it to me. And when she did, it was also just like, it was interesting and novel.
That she had visuals.
Yeah, but it was just like a thing we talked about briefly. And then it was like,
but like
it was not the meat of the
streaks, pie. Images, shapes.
More lights. And like, imagine like, for me, I saw a little bit like, when you press on your eyes and sometimes there's psychedelic imagery?
Yeah, I get
It's like
those.
that is what I would see sometimes. Or sometimes I thought I could actually see things a little bit. And I'd be like, oh, that's the edge of the bathtub. And I'd just be like, I got this. And I'd just walk over and I'd slam my head into the wall and realize I was 180 degrees in the wrong direction in the room. Like I had like bleeding. I was bleeding on my head. And I didn't even realize because there's no mirror, obviously, until the last day. I looked up my head. It was bleeding. I was like, Jesus, I didn't even know. I bumped my head a few times.
Helmet in there, honey.
I know, a couple times. So after that, I moved real slow, moving through that. I was like, what's the rush?
Okay.
What's
so almost
the
like
rush?
mirage. You had mirages.
Totally. Subtle, very subtle. Because there's truly no light, which is a strange thing. Yeah. So, I don't know. I mean, I don't want to talk about this much more after this because I'm tired of formulating thoughts about it. I want to keep feeling it. It's like, that's the medicine for me.
Gosh, honey, I'm so happy for you. I'm so happy to even just hear you say a phrase like that. It makes me ecstatic.
Well, I need help and support from you. And then, of course, I'm working with Navjeet. And maybe I want to work with Adrienne again, maybe remotely. But the point is, I'm learning and I need support because I have many, many years of another pathway in my brain. And my brain's on my team too. Everyone's like, "It's all good. Let's just become even more of a human being here and really step into it." So
it makes me so excited. My body gets excited hearing you say that.
Oh, girl.
Well, it just feels like a new flavors are now possible. New flavors of a life experience. That color palettes that you didn't even know were on the table to be part of all of this now are for you and available. And wow. I'm proud of you.
Thanks, Hen. It's definitely brought some perspective that I'm still working through. Maybe briefly, I could mention how, like, as soon as I got back, everyone was texting me about Aaron Rodgers, the quarterback, who's going into his darkness retreat.
Yeah. Weird timing, right?
Yeah, I was getting texts, I guess, through the articles, because he announced that he was thinking about retiring, but he was going to go into a darkness retreat. This is what the article said, and he would decide after the darkness retreat. And Aaron is someone who I've known tangentially, just the fact like Aubrey knows him. That's pretty much it. Well, and Danica Patrick, they used to be partners, and she was just on the podcast, and I've actually met other partners of his, but I never met him. And he also, in the past, I'd heard him talk about, like on Joe Rogan, I think it was, about when he did ayahuasca. And this is a couple years back, and he got a lot of shit just from the general public. like the usual ignorance of like, that's weird or drugs or this or that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think his response to most people was like, yes, I've worked with ayahuasca and then I got MVP 2 years in a row. Mic drop.
Kiss it.
So it's like, I don't even have to say anything else. Like, so where's the criticism? You know what I mean? Like, and I'm killing it.
So Aaron's
So
going in.
the people kept texting me that. I thought, if you'd like to hear the rest of this podcast, please go to patreon.com/eastforest. You can sign up and support this project, and I share lots of other things there, like demos among our monthly Zoom council that we do together. That's our council on patreon.com/eastforest. And thank you to everyone who is on the council, who supports. It means a lot. The song that you're hearing in the background is called A Hand in the Dark. It's from the Possible album. Seems appropriate. It's Owen Hoffman-Smith playing the cello, both cellos on this song. And got some arrangement help by Lorna Doone. And there's a playlist on Spotify called Possible Everything. So it's got the B-sides, which is the Still Possible album, and then instrumentals and all sorts of things. Some live tracks. We did some live versions of this record, live in Brooklyn. So anyway, that's over on Spotify. Thank you for listening. You guys keep walking your walk. Don't take any shit, but if you do, do it with grace.